Imagine sending a kid to school with like a visibly broken arm,
Right. Yeah.
and the school's official response is just to give them, I don't know, a sympathetic nod, maybe an ice pack.
Right. And then just tell them to go sit down and focus on math.
Exact. I mean, we would be totally outraged. The whole
Um,
community would be up in arms.
oh, absolutely. It will be on the local news in 5 minutes.
But the crazy thing is, for decades, that has been the exact protocol for a child showing up to a classroom in the middle of a psychological crisis.
It really has.
I mean, think about the traditional school nurse's office. You go there for a scraped knee or a fever, and the system is built perfectly to patch you up.
Sure.
But if a student is dealing with, say, crushing anxiety, trauma, or just a quiet mental health emergency, the traditional infrastructure just wasn't built to handle it.
No, not at all. You might get, maybe 10 minutes with an overwhelmed guidance counselor.
Yeah, and historically, that was basically the end of the line.
It's an incredibly stark contrast when you frame it like that. I mean, we've essentially built these fortresses to protect physical health in schools,
Right.
but we left emotional and psychological well-being completely exposed to the elements. And honestly, that is exactly why the source material we are looking at today is so compelling for you listening.
Yes, so let's get right into it. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today, and we're recording this on April 12th, 2026, is to examine a really fascinating stack of internal documents.
Yeah, these are the strategy documents for a program called MentalSpace School.
Right. And we really want to understand how this organization is attempting to completely rewire access to mental health care in the education system.
Because they aren't just proposing, putting up a new wellness poster in the hallway.
Or like an extra training day for teachers.
Exactly. They are trying to systematically dismantle the traditional roadblocks to care. The core philosophy here is the belief that every single student deserves access to mental health care.
Regardless of income, location, or background.
Right. But obviously, claiming that and actually executing it are two very different things.
Totally. Which is why we need to look under the hood here.
Yeah.
So building on that idea of roadblocks, the strategy documents identify exactly who is falling through the cracks.
Yeah, they outline what essentially amounts to a 3-story brick wall for vulnerable students.
Yeah, the midday topic document lays out 3 major barriers. And the first one is just simply distance.
The geographic barrier, right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a student in a rural area, you might be physically located miles and miles away from the nearest licensed therapist.
Right. And for a working family, taking half a day off to drive a kid 2 hours round trip for a 45-minute session.
On a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. It's geographically and professionally impossible.
Which leads directly into the second structural roadblock, which is cost.
Oh, the cost is a massive one. Traditional private practice rates can easily be hundreds of dollars an hour.
Yeah. And if a family is already, sitting at the kitchen table agonizing over grocery bills, budgeting for ongoing mental health care is a conversation that stops before it even begins.
It's just an insurmountable financial wall.
Okay, so you have distance and you have cost.
Yeah.
And the third one is the trust barrier.
Yes, specifically for students of color who worry a traditional therapist just won't understand their lived experience.
Right. Now, the documents point out that MentalSpace tackles each of these individually.
Yeah, they use telehealth to erase the distance barrier, Medicaid acceptance for the cost barrier, and deploying a diverse team to erase that trust barrier.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
From a logistical standpoint, if you remove the distance barrier by putting therapy on a screen, and you remove the cost barrier so it's completely free, won't you just end up with a massive bottleneck?
You mean just an overwhelming influx of students?
Yeah. Like, if I'm a student in crisis, and it's free and on my phone, but I have to sit on a waiting list for 6 weeks to actually speak to a human being, the system is still fundamentally broken.
That is a totally valid skepticism, and honestly, it's usually the downfall of a lot of these public health initiatives.
Right.
But the strategy documents actually explicitly address this. They hinge their entire operational success on 2 massive claims.
Which are?
Providing same-day access and 247 support.
Wait, really? Same-day access? For specialized mental health care?
That's what the text promises. They claim they haven't just built a marketing funnel, They've supposedly built the actual hard clinical capacity behind the scenes to absorb all that need without collapsing.
Wow. I mean, if they can actually pull that off, that's an impressive logistical achievement. Because waiting a month to talk to a professional when you're spiraling is it's dangerous.
But here's the catch.
Right.
You can make it free,
and you could put it on an iPad the same day. But if the person on the other end of the screen has no idea what that student's daily reality is like, that student's just going to log off.
And that brings us perfectly to how they handle that third barrier, the trust barrier we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this logically shifts us to the interpersonal level. How do they actually establish that trust?
The documents heavily emphasize something they call culturally competent care.
Yes, and I love this quote from the morning topic source material. It says a student should, quote, feel seen before they even say a word.
It's a powerful directive.
It really is. But let's break down what that actually means in practice. Because hiring a diverse team of therapists isn't just about, like, checking a corporate box, right?
No, not at all. The text makes it clear that it's a clinical necessity because, as it states, when a student trusts their therapist, real healing begins.
Right.
You have to think about the cognitive load of therapy. If a student sits down and has to spend half their session just translating their cultural norms.
Or defending their baseline reality.
Exactly. If they have to do all that to a therapist who just doesn't get it, they aren't healing. They're just giving a sociology lecture.
Oh, that makes total sense. Think about it like this. Imagine walking into a room where everyone speaks a different language, and you're expected to share your deepest, most intimate anxieties.
The translation effort alone would be exhausting.
Completely exhausting. Now imagine walking into a room where someone already speaks your native emotional language.
That's a great way to put it.
That's the difference this makes. You can just exhale and start the real work.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, moving from the theoretical philosophy to the concrete operational reality.
Right. How does this survive contact with a real school?
Exactly. The source material outlines their comprehensive Georgia K-12 mental health initiative.
Let's talk about Georgia. What does this ecosystem actually look like in those schools?
Well, the discussion broadens here to show that MentalSpace isn't just for individual students, it's a whole school ecosystem.
Meaning they integrate into the actual building.
Yes. They assign dedicated therapist teams per school. So the clinical team actually learns the culture of that specific middle or high school.
Oh, wow. So they aren't just random operators on an 800 number.
Exactly. And these teams handle heavy-duty interventions. The text highlights crisis intervention and suicide and violence prevention.
That's intense. So they are stepping into life or death moments.
Yes. And on top of that, they include family counseling. Because, as the evening strategy notes, families deserve to be part of the solution.
Which is so critical. You can't just treat a kid from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then send them back to a chaotic home without looping the family in.
Right. It has to be holistic.
But wait, what about the teachers?
Ah, yes.
Because educators are on the front lines of this crisis every single day. They absorb so much secondary trauma.
The documents absolutely address this. They have a specific focus on staff wellness.
Good.
Yeah, and there's a really memorable line from the source about providing this support, quote, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
You can't pour from an empty cup. That is so true. If a teacher's burning out, the whole classroom environment just degrades.
Precisely. The adults are just as much a part of the ecosystem.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me.
The logistics.
Yeah, the practicalities. We're
Yeah.
talking about dedicated teams, same-day access, staff wellness, family counseling. How on earth is this massive infrastructure actually paid for and regulated in Georgia without bankrupting the school district?
That is the big question. And the documents are very clear on the financial mechanics. To make it affordable, they accept an extensive network of commercial insurance.
Like who?
The list is huge. BCBS, Cigna, Aetna, UHC, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, and AmeriGroup.
Okay, so they bill private insurance for the kids who have it. But what about the low-income families we talked about hitting that cost barrier?
This is the operational masterstroke. Crucially, they highlight that for Medicaid, the cost is exactly $0.
Wait, really? Exactly $0.
Exactly $0. Free at the point of service.
How is that even possible? How do they keep the lights on if they're just eating the cost of specialized therapy for a massive percentage of students?
Well, by relying on state contracts and systemic scale, they remove the financial friction completely for the most vulnerable populations.
That genuinely changes the game if they can sustain it. But, and here's my next logistical red flag, that introduces massive compliance issues, right?
Immense privacy concerns, yeah.
You're suddenly piping highly sensitive psychiatric data directly into a public school building.
Right, which is why the documents emphasize their strict security. The whole operation is heavily guarded by HIPAA and FERPA compliance.
Okay, wait. I know. That's the fortress guarding your medical records at the doctor's office. But FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, What is that in this context?
Right, so if HIPAA guards the medical side, think of FERPA as a completely separate fortress guarding the student's report card, attendance, and disciplinary files.
Okay. And usually those two fortresses don't talk to each other.
Exactly. Schools are terrified of FERPA breaches, but MentalSpace claims to have built a highly secure digital bridge between those two fortresses, satisfying both the health and education departments.
That makes a lot of sense. So they keep the school legally safe while getting the kid help. And actually, there's a major ticking clock driving this whole initiative in Georgia, isn't there?
There really is. The documents highlight that they are supporting schools to meet the looming HB 268 compliance deadline.
Right. By July 2026.
Exactly. House Bill 268 is forcing the issue. Schools have to get their mental health infrastructure up to code, and MentalSpace is stepping in as the turnkey solution.
So they don't really have years to form committees and debate this. The urgency is baked in.
Yes. And when you look at the outcomes, the actual success metrics from the initiative, you see why districts are jumping on this.
Oh, I was so impressed by those stats. I
Yeah.
mean, they are staggering. We're talking about an 89% improved attendance rate,
Yep.
a 92% reduced anxiety rate, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
The numbers really speak for themselves. It proves that mental health intervention translates directly into academic metrics.
It's basically like treating a fever to cure the chills, you know.
How do you mean?
Well, by treating the root cause, which is the 92% reduced anxiety, they naturally fix the symptom, which is kids avoiding school. And that's why we see the 89% jump in school attendance.
That's exactly right. The anxiety was the misalignment tearing the system apart.
Yeah. And just real quick, for any educators or community members listening, the documents do mention you can reach out to them directly.
Right. You can find them at mentalspaceschool.com or email them at mentalspaceschool@childtherapy.com.
Perfect. So as we wrap up this deep dive, how would you synthesize everything we've looked at today?
Well, I think Mental Space School represents a total paradigm shift. I mean, by combining $0 Medicaid access, immediate same-day telehealth, and deeply culturally competent care.
They're doing so much all at once.
They really are. They're fundamentally turning schools into holistic mental health hubs for students, staff, and families alike.
It's a complete reimagining of the system.
Absolutely.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you, the listener, to mull over today. You know, we started this conversation talking about the school nurse's office and how treating a scraped knee is just a normal, seamless part of the day.
Right.
Well, if this comprehensive, barrier-free model of mental health care actually becomes as seamlessly integrated into the K-12 experience as math or science classes, how fundamentally will that shift the trajectory of the next generation's adulthood?
It's a great question.
I mean, if we fix the foundation right now while they're young, what kind of society do they build tomorrow?